And in 2003, John Breeden was the first reservist to fly with Predator and Reaper. I was the second one. And the thing that I can say that the reservists brought most to that organization was experience, confidence, and the energy that the budding new organization in the Air Force, that wasn't necessarily the most glamorous, most popular thing to attract all the active duty superstars. Reservists tend to be a lot more pragmatic, and they've brought their experience along with them. We brought the first weapons officers into the program. We've had a squadron commander. I was deputy group commander. That's as high as they would active duty was willing to integrate at that time, at least. And the experience that the reservists brought, we're able to missions for as long as we can foresee in the future, and it's only growing at a faster rate. So those lines have to be filled with people. You have to make sure that whatever kind of construct you have guaranteed reliability of folks coming in. So those are the biggest, I think, factors with the reserve units: the experience and the applicability to the part-time status.
Thank you. Colonel Sachs?
How many folks here have seen and read the IW definition that's in the DoD, the new DoD directive? Raise your hands. Anybody here? Okay, one person. Okay, let me set the baseline for this so you understand what irregular warfare is. This is in the DoD directive on irregular warfare. It's a violent struggle among state and non-state actors for legitimacy and influence over the relevant populations. IW favors indirect and asymmetric approaches, though it may employ the full range of military and other capabilities in order to erode an adversary's power, influence, and will. That's a mouthful there. Couple of key points here. It talks about direct and indirect approaches, and this is where we get into building partnership capacity. We talk about the different phases of war. In phase 0, where you're looking at shaping, really, if you look at building partnership capacity, it is about developing a nation's ability to secure its borders and to deal with internal conflicts. It's about legitimacy of the government, credibility with the population, providing stability for those populations where the root of the insurgency activities start. If you look at the directive, there are 5 big elements of irregular warfare. The big 5 are counterterrorism, unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, or FID as it's called, counterinsurgency, COIN, and stability ops. Much of these missions were in the province of your special operations forces. We've learned through OIF and OEF that you need capacity. Our soft forces are not of the number where you can optimally provide that development. That's why we've stood up CAF-T and CAP-TF from an air power standpoint. CAF-T is the Coalition Air Force Transition Team, and that's the organization in Iraq that's helping to build the Iraqi Air Forces. And then CAP-TF is a combined air power transition force in Afghanistan to do the same thing. We look at that holistically, working with in a joint realm with the ground forces. This isn't just about working autonomously. It's about working with the ground forces in a joint environment to help provide that stability and security and legitimacy for those host nation governments. I could talk all day about this, but what I really want to get to is what the reserve roles in this are perceptions here. The reserve, as my colleagues have stated, does not develop missions. They look to work with the active duty as we develop this mission. The Air Force has moved out and has developed some foundational pieces. You'll find strategy that's signed by the chief and the SECAF. You'll find an operating concept. You'll find that the Air Force has program dollars for the near term, midterm, and far term for irregular warfare and for building partnership capacity. We're looking at capabilities, the right tech for the right fight, and looking at those capabilities that are transferable, affordable, modular, and interoperable, working with host nations. Now, I know the Air Force Reserve is looking at how they can partner with the active duty in this emerging mission. I mentioned that I'm down at headquarters AETC, and General Lorenz has taken on the task of standing up the schoolhouse. This is about institutionalizing the education and training of airmen to serve as air advisors in these host nations. We've been doing this for many, many years. We have organizations in the Air Force who do this. SAF-IA does a lot of this work. But this is about growing a group of airmen, institutionalizing this piece so that we can use this as a part of our strategy. As I said, we're doing this right now in OIF and OEF. There are opportunities for the Reserve to partner, and I know that General Stenner is looking at those opportunities, whether it's training airmen to fly the aircraft in theater right now, future capabilities, or even looking at the training piece of educating and training our airmen.
Great, thank you. Before we take a brief moment and allow you to all grab lunch and get in line and come back, I just want to touch on a couple of the topics that I know we'll hit upon in Q&A. We'll probably have about 30 minutes or so for that and the remainder of our panel. But we, at Heritage, we recently hosted General Schwartz, of course, and we recently hosted General McKinley. We'll have General Stenner over in September for a public event. And of course, a lot of repeating themes keep coming up, and I'm sure the panel's already expecting a few of the questions that are likely this morning. But I thought your comments were extremely interesting, Colonel Dix, in the realm of this question over more fourth-generation fighters for the Air Reserve component. And of course, I would say there's a seam between the Reserve and the Air National Guard on the answer to this question. General Stenner has said previously the fighter mission is going away. Well, that's pretty, if I wonder, and I will pose this as an open question, not one for you to answer now, this institutionalization of air advisors and training host nations, presumably most of those host nations will be operating fourth-generation aircraft. So I wonder if that doesn't make the case instead of eliminating it for additional fighters, fourth-gen, for the Air Reserve component. I want to talk briefly when we get back to about the Commission on the National Guard and Reserves and what it means to this panel about some of the changes. All of us know that the Air Force tackled the questions of operational versus strategic a long time ago, and yet we see that institutionally within DoD at the senior levels, active and civilian, it's going to just, it's operational permanently. That seems to be the consensus inside the building, and I would argue that's probably unhealthy. But what does that mean going forward if this is the case? Because again, General Stenner has said we want to preserve that strategic part of the Air Reserve component. We don't want it to change. We'll always be operational. We'll always be ready in 72 hours, et cetera. But he's key on keeping that unique capability, allowing the nation to surge when necessary. So if we're going to, if senior leaders and defense strategies forthcoming say that the reserve component will be operational for the foreseeable future, what's that going to mean for all of you? So what I want to do is give us all 10 minutes. I'm going to be pretty strict on that, so hop in line.